1970s cracked open a raw, unapologetic chapter in American media. The nation was reeling from the devastation of the Vietnam War, the Kent State shootings, and the Watergate scandal that toppled a president. Public trust in authority crumbled, and that deep suspicion found its way into movie screens, television sets, and into the soundtracks of the decade.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
In cinema, blaxploitation films burst onto the scene. Bold, defiant stories featuring black protagonists who challenged corrupt politicians, crooked cops, and the racial injustices of America. While criticized for exploiting stereotypes, these films offered communities long sidelined by mainstream media a form of agency and representation. Grindhouse theaters emerged as spaces for exploitation films, low-budget, high-shock cinema that tackled the themes of violence, sex, inequality, and social collapse. Movies like Taxi Driver, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Death Wish held up a grim mirror to society grappling with crime, urban decay, and the fragility of the American dream. As fears of crime gripped the nation, serial killers like Ted Bundy, the Son of Sam, and the Zodiac Killer seized headlines and haunted the public imagination. Television and film reflected and fueled this anxiety, blurring the line between entertainment and nightmare. That anxiety gave birth to a new subgenre, the slasher film. Movies like Halloween, Black Christmas, and The Texas Chainsaw Massacre turned the psychological terror of real-life killers into cinematic horror. These films didn't just scare. They tapped into the culture's growing fear that danger could strike anywhere, even in your own home. On the dance floor, disco music exploded. Soul Train, American Bandstand, and nightclubs like Studio 54 provided a glittering up-tempo escape from a chaotic world. The era's mantra of free love and celebration of sexual liberation blended with the rising drug culture, where cocaine became the party drug of choice among celebrities, Wall Street executives, and youthful rebels alike. In living rooms across America, black-centered sitcoms like Sanford and Son, Good Times, and The Jeffersons redefined primetime television. These shows brought black families, humor, and struggle into the mainstream, tackling everything from systemic racism to poverty to black pride, all while making millions laugh. Music gatherings continued to be more than just concerts. They were cultural statements, places where people came together for love, peace, and protest. Festivals like Woodstock left a lasting mark, while the arrival of bands like the Beatles in the 60s had already redefined pop culture and fan devotion.
Jimmy Carter knows what it's like to work for a living.
Politicians began to fully embrace television as a tool for image control and public persuasion. Presidents from Nixon to Carter deployed mass media to shape narratives around war, economic policy, and national morale. Campaigns became performance art, and increasingly media consultants, image coaches, and advisors worked behind the scenes to sell not policy, but personality.
Going back to work again, it's better than it used to be.
The rise in controversial content prompted government response. The Federal Communications Commission tightened and relaxed guidelines throughout the decade, balancing pressure from conservative groups, civil rights activists, and free speech advocates. Lawsuits over obscenity and indecency, like the Miller versus California Supreme Court case in 1973, redefined what could legally be shown and said on American screens. One of the most surprising and significant developments of the decade was the rise of adult films. Movies like Deep Throat and Behind the Green Door moved from seedy backrooms to mainstream discussion, marking what some called the golden age of porn. America's relationship with sexuality played out in public as never before, and these films became symbols of the era's conflict between moral panic and sexual liberation. Even television news evolved, adopting grittier, more confrontational reporting styles. Programs like 60 Minutes turned hard questions into ratings gold.
Almost all pimps are black. They give themselves names like Hollywood, Silky, Dandy, and Snake.
While scripted television pushed boundaries, addressing abortion, race, drugs, and war in prime time. And then came Saturday Night Live. Premiering in 1975, the show redefined American comedy with sharp satire, political impersonations, and a whole new kind of rebellious energy.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
The late-night format gave voice to a generation too jaded for mainstream laughs, a raw, live platform that didn't ask for permission to offend.
Jungle Bunny! Honky! Spade! Honky honky!
The 1970s left an indelible mark on American media, a decade defined by defiance, escape, and the rise of powerful new platforms that could challenge the status quo and influence the national conversation.
Sunny day, sleep in the